Good time of day, guys! My name is Godzi, and welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry, Ch.4 Himatsubushi. Last episode, we began this chapter as we were introduced to Akasaka, and how he's investigating, in Hinamizawa, the possibility that anyone there was involved in the kidnapping of some random kid in Tokyo. So, cool. Not really just a random kid, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, but more or less when I put it that way, yeah, still a random kid. So, sick. Anyways, before we get into this episode, I have two things to say, and then we're going to start discussing some comments from last episode, because I got a lot more than usual, actually. So yeah, first things first, I'm a bit tired, so if I sound a bit groggy or out of it, then that's why. I have coffee again, though, so hopefully I'll be fine, like, eventually, this episode, so, yeah. Second thing, Happy New Year. That's all for that, yeah. Anyways, let's start talking about comments. I'm going to try to see if I can sort out the frickin', like, non-spoiler stuff from the spoiler stuff first, so, yeah, so we'll start with non-spoiler stuff, and then we'll go into spoiler time, so, first things first, I got a comment, mentioning the fact that I actually like the full opacity text box, and I don't really have a reason for why I like it, I just think it looks nice, really, it's just, I don't know, the texture. I think it defaulted to this when I started Onigafuchi anyways, and I just got used to it. So maybe that's more the reason, but I think it looks nice. I can understand not liking it, though, so, yeah. Second thing, we've got some random information from last episode, so I'll just read the comment as follows. Here's where we start getting the political implications behind Hinamizawa unity. Not that the stuff before wasn't political, but I mean overtly so. I can definitely see how that'll happen. It seems like, from what I can tell so far, this chapter is going to be a lot more on, like, kind of the political jargon behind everything happening in Hinamizawa, rather than, we're kids, look at us go, we're shooting dolls at the festival and crap, and, I don't know, we throw paper balls at each other during class, because we're kids, haha. It's more like the adults are speaking now, so be quiet, kids. That's kind of how this chapter feels so far, so I think we'll probably we're definitely going to get a bigger emphasis on the police force, obviously, because, you know, Akasaka is a cop and all, but, yeah, and we'll probably see more of Ooishi, so that's going to be nice. Second off, well, I mean, communism. China, Korea, and the USSR weren't/aren't communist, and that they don't follow the original libertarian leftist theory at all. But, well, yeah, not many people are informed enough to make this distinction. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know too much about, like, communist or socialist or Marxist theory at all. So, yeah. So I didn't actually really know that, especially the USSR, wasn't particularly communist as far as the theory goes, but I was more just bringing it up as in, like, these are countries that are commonly referred to as communists, at least, like, even in modern day, some people still believe that, Russia and China are communist countries, and I'm pretty sure, neither of them are even close to how they were 40, 50 years ago. So, yeah. Especially China. Like, isn't China closer to being more of, like, a fascist dictatorship at this point, rather than a communist dictatorship, I guess? Which isn't really much better how it's not better, honestly, but, yeah. I was more just bringing up, like, oh yeah, Red Scare, and stuff like that, so yeah. This is the last spoiler-free thing, I suppose. I find it funny how protesting, even if violent, is labeled as undemocratic action. Isn't it like the literal embodiment of democracy? the people rising up and attempting to be heard. But I mean, I think it's intentional on Ryukishi's 07's part. We start seeing more sides of the conflict as the chapter progresses, and he doesn't really force you to come to any particular conclusion, urging just to understand. I don't know. I don't really have a comment on that. I just more wanted to read it and put it out there, I guess. I'm assuming in this first line, though, you meant to say even if non-violent, but maybe I'm just super tired. I don't know. But, yeah, I feel like this is definitely something that can even be applied to modern day, like, modern day America even, because it's like, yeah, we're just vibing out here, and people will still have a problem with it, you know? Like, I'm gonna make a relation to something that actually happened in my hometown. So, I live in, for better or worse, a very small white majority town in rural New York. Basically right in the middle of Republican country. So, most people are Republicans. There were Trump signs, fucking more. I actually saw more Trump flags than I saw Trump signs over the last year. Hell, over the last 4 years. And there's this one kid, who, how do I fucking describe him? Well, I don't really need to describe him. He did a solo BLM protest in, the center of the village, and he still had people who had a problem with it. We have a very tiny population, not like Hinamizawa tiny, obviously, but very small population. So, yeah, and most people trafficking through that area are not even from our town. They're, like, passing through, because we're a frickin' Passover town, you know? One of those towns that you just pass through when you're going to a bigger city, on vacation or crap like that. So, yeah. So, it's just kind of surprising how even in modern day, people still called him a socialist, a Marxist, communist, violent Antifa thug. And it's like, he's in 10th grade, dude. I think he's in 11th now. Actually, no, is he? I think he's in 11th grade, yeah. So he's like 16, 17 years old, somewhere around there. And it's like these people were afraid of him for protesting. So that's more just story time rather than how it relates to Higurashi. But it's like, this is not a new theme at all, because this game was made, I would assume this chapter was made like 2004, 2005-ish. So, yeah, like, it's just weird. The world doesn't want to change as far as culture regarding protest goes. It's weird. So now we're going to go into spoiler time. Not really anything for the original anime, I think. I'm checking if there's anything that I have to say about that. No. Okay, so we're just going to go into Go, because there is quite a bit to talk about regarding the last episode of Go, as I've been given more information that I didn't really catch my first time watching it. There also was not an episode this week, I believe, so nothing to talk... Actually, no, there definitely wasn't. So there's nothing new to talk about, unless I'm stupid and missed it, but I'm pretty sure they took this week off, and next week, Neko Damashi starts, so, yeah, let's just get into the stuff with Go. Spoiler time. If you don't want spoilers, then mute. Alright, so, first things first, we've got, 2 comments from Fawful999, so we'll start with the first one listed. I think they're in backwards chronological order here. Actually, no. No, these are in backwards chronological order, so we'll start with whichever one's just listed first. I've heard a theory that Keiichi got hit with one of Satoko's traps, and he hallucinated Teppei hitting him with a bat. When Satoko saw Keiichi going crazy, she went to call for help and died in the shooting. I think that's possible. I think, there's definitely some potential problems with that. I think the trap theory makes sense. And I think Teppei being Keiichi's hallucination is probably true. But I think it's very likely not true that Satoko went to call for help and died in the shooting. We'll get more into this later, but I think it was a not malevolent, is that? Malicious. Malicious is the word I'm trying to think of. It was a malicious trap set up by Satoko to put Keiichi out of commission for whatever reason, so she could somehow do something at the festival. And we'll talk about that more, because the festival part is definitely the most we don't fucking know what happened part, so yeah, but it's possible that if Satoko isn't in the time loop, then it's very likely that that happened. But then it would beg the question of why the hell did Satoko set up a trap otherwise that was either dangerous enough to make Keiichi hallucinate, or why did Keiichi hallucinate if it wasn't dangerous enough to make him hallucinate otherwise? So, yeah, second comment from the same user. It's very similar, this is referring to a statement that I made, last episode, where I was comparing Tatari Damashi and Tatari Goroshi, with how confusing they are. It's very similar to Tatari Goroshi in that way. It's the most confusing arc so far, and there's a lot up for interpretation. Which is, yeah, God, I'm tired. I don't think I needed to read that comment after all, but that's besides the point. Forgive me. So now we've got a very long comment, which might take a bit of time to talk about, but we should be fine. Is my coffee cool enough yet? Probably not. Let's try anyways. Yeah, we're probably fine, but I just think I still need to wait a bit longer. Probably would be better if I make it a New Year's resolution to actually edit my videos more. Good joke, right? Alright, so, comment from Dapper Shinks, going as follows. There's actually more to work with here than you may realize. And then they go on to list things, so I'll respond to each thing on the list, I suppose. First thing, Satoko's shower scene. She had no bruises or visible injuries. Yes, she said Teppei flew into a rage and attacked her. Also, washing off and changing clothes. This wouldn't be so sus if it wasn't Higurashi. Yeah, I think that's, quite telling, actually. I did not catch that. I do remember the scene, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to, like, the little details. It was more like, I was more waiting to see, like, alright, if I'm right, then they're gonna start showing supernatural shit or just overtly show Satoko being malicious. So I was expecting her to eventually have, like, a creepy smile or some glint of being evil-ish, or at least not, like, the normal Satoko, you know? I was looking for hints of her being Lambda Delta-y, you know? So, yeah, I definitely missed the lack of bruises. Washing off and changing clothes, I think that could have just been something that happened regardless, like, but otherwise, yeah, I think it's probably fair to say, though, that the intention with that was Satoko did not get beat by Teppei because she probably killed him a long fucking time ago, more than likely with Satoshi's bat. So, yeah, we'll talk about that more a little bit later. 2, Satoko did not take her medicine. I don't remember this medicine. I'm assuming it's for Hinamizawa syndrome. Because I know she didn't go to the clinic. And I've heard theories about how that changes a lot. How she didn't go to the clinic, so that changes her mental state at the time. So, yeah. But maybe she didn't need to change her mental state because she's not the same Satoko that she was in Tatari Goroshi or Mina Goroshi. So, yeah. 3rd, Rena didn't say Ooishi opened fire on the crowd or that he shot the club members. She said he pulled out his gun, then said everyone died. Ooishi was up to something, but I don't think it was a mass murder plot. He was probably aiming for the true culprit, or at least who he believed to be the culprit, making it seem like he was going to shoot the kids. That's my guess, anyway. Yeah, and if that's the case, then, with how suspicious Ooishi is of the Sonozakis, I wouldn't be surprised if that's who he was going after. Like, if he was going after Mion or Shion, And maybe he did shoot them because maybe they tried to fight back. Because it's like, already, not many people in this arc were on good terms with Ooishi. So it's very possible that Ooishi tried to confront Mion or Shion off-screen. And then they fought back and Ooishi kills them in self-defense. Maybe one or the other, maybe both even. Maybe one or the other sacrifices themselves for their sister. Maybe Rika got caught up in the crossfire, or maybe that was Satoko. I doubt it. Either way, I think if Ooishi wasn't going to specifically shoot a bunch of people, then there has to be a reason why... Like, we can easily make a reason for why Satoko and Rika die, but Mion and Shion are definitely bigger questions, you know? Because it's like, if it were something random, like Shion and Rena died, and Mion survived, then it would be more plausible that it's a mass murder plot. Or if possibly Satoko or Rika didn't die, but Satoko and Rika have died in every arc so far. Whereas Rena didn't die in Wata Damashi or Tatari Damashi. She did die in Oni Damashi. Whereas Mion only survived Oni Damashi. Shion died in Wata Damashi and Tatari Damashi. So, yeah, what I'm trying to say is that Rika and Satoko are the only consistent ones. You could argue Shion's consistent too, but she wasn't even in Oni Damashi, so I think it's probably not fair to say that she's consistent or inconsistent, because we only have 2 deaths, 2 arcs that she was in to really base shit off of. So, yeah, I think Mion and Shion being the 2 that died, alongside Satoko and Rika, make it more likely that Ooishi was trying to do something to them. We also don't know Oishi's fate, so that's something too. It could be possible that the incident gave Rena Hinamizawa syndrome to an extent too, and made it so that Ooishi, like, she hallucinated. I don't know, maybe... I'm trying to word this properly. I'm thinking it's possible that when Rena saw... Maybe it's possible Ooishi just outright tried to shoot Mion or Shion, and Rena seeing that maybe caused her to go to max symptoms or some symptoms or something, and hallucinate Ooishi also killing Rika and Satoko, even though it was very likely Satoko doing her whole murder-suicide thing again. Or it's possible that Satoko thought the culprit was Shion, because it's like, according to my theory so far, Satoko retains memories from the time loop, Rika does not. So in the first arc, Satoko thought, oh, Rika's behind everything, because she's clearly in this time loop too, or she knows what's going on. So I kill her, kill myself. But then in Wata Damashi, she's like, alright, wasn't Rika, because Featherin says so, or something like that, I don't know. So then she goes after Mion kills herself, and she's like, well, fuck! And then, in Tatari Damashi, maybe she's like, alright, then it's possibly Shion. Maybe I just got the wrong twin. So that's also possible. Because if that theory is right, there wouldn't be a reason for Satoko to try and kill Rika again. So it could instead be that Ooishi did specifically target Mion or Shion, more than likely Mion, since she has more ties to the actual Sonozaki family, and was like, alright, I need to take you in for questioning or something. And she fought back, Ooishi tried to shoot her and ended up killing Rika in the process, and then killed Mion. And maybe, I don't know, it's possible he took his own life out of guilt too, for killing Rika and Mion. So I think it's more likely that Ooishi killed Rika and Mion while Satoko did her murder-suicide on Shion. That's possible, but she could have also done it on Rika again. I think it's more likely that she did it on Shion. So, yeah. Or she did it on Mion, not knowing that she did it on the same person twice. Does that put any dirt on Shion? Not necessarily, but it's possible. So, yeah. Fourth thing, the light switch seems like a classic trap setup. I'm almost certain it's one of Satoko's traps, as I believe you mentioned, but I don't think it was harmless. The thing Satoko wanted to give Keiichi was Satoshi's bat, to the back of the head. A genuine attack, but one probably meant to knock him out instantly. Was this to protect him, or something else? We don't have the context to know. Something I thought of is a potential reason for Keiichi to have seen Teppei during the hallucination. Teppei being there wouldn't make much sense if Keiichi has no prerequisites for Hinamizawa syndrome or anything similar beforehand. So I think what potentially happened is perhaps when the police went to Satogo's house to try and capture Teppei, he, quote-unquote, wasn't there. Could be that Satogo set up a trap with not just the bat, but also Teppei's body, so that when she flipped the light switch, the bat hits Keiichi in the back of the head, and also potentially caused Teppei's corpse to drop from the ceiling. That's possible. I don't know how the living fuck Satogo would be able to set that up, but to be fair, how does she set up most of her traps? Like, she's how old? Like 10, 11, 12-ish? And she's able to set up these traps. I wouldn't put it past her to find some way to make it so her uncle's corpse falls from the ceiling to try and make Keiichi hallucinate. I don't know. Maybe for some reason she knew that in Tatari Goroshi, he killed Teppei. So he would be predisposed to, like, getting Hinamizawa syndrome if he believes Teppei attacked him. So if he was hit in the back of the head with a bat, turned around and saw Teppei there, he would think, Teppei hit me, ah! So then maybe he just beat the shit out of Teppei's corpse, and then went to the hospital. So, that's the only thing I can think of there. Fifth thing. Look at the scene in the ED with Keiichi and the bat. Notice anything? The clothes are his casual clothes, which he wore to Satogo's house. Not the school outfit we see in the Onigafuchi flashback. And those arms don't look like Teppei's. They look more like a teenage or adult woman's. Maybe Chie-sensei came to check on / watch over Satogo, and happened to hear the ruckus, meeting an unfortunate fate. That's possible. I don't really know whether that happened or not. I have noticed in the ED that Keiichi does wear his casual clothes instead of his school uniform. I never really put 2 and 2 together with that it's possibly a scene that we haven't seen yet. But otherwise, I'm not really sure. It's possible that it was Chie. It's possible that it was Mion or Shion. It's possible that it was Rika, even. Like, there's a lot of people that he could have beaten with the bat, if not Teppei's corpse, you know? I think either way, it would have to be someone who's dead. Like, Teppei's corpse, that's like me shooting in the dark, you know? I don't really know whether it was there or not. It is possible that because in previous arcs he did kill Teppei under the effects of Hinamizawa syndrome, that being hit in the back of the head with the same exact bat would cause similar hallucinations to that. But I don't know. Either way, it's definitely Keiichi's hallucination and not Satogo's, I would say. So, yeah. Sixth and final thing on the list. It's fall when Keiichi meets Rena. Why does he still have that head bandage, and the same one he had at the end of the other 2 arcs for that matter, if it's months later, and why would they keep him that long for that injury? Well, the nurse in Onidamashi asked about his neck being itchy, which implies Hinamizawa syndrome in this universe is at least being researched by broader institutions. Probably less shady than the clinic of the OG. He was likely being treated for it. Doesn't explain the bandage, though. Did something else occur in between? I mean, he was hit in the head with the bat, and it's possible that if he's being treated for Hinamizawa syndrome, that they're doing brain surgery. To an extent, I don't know. Let me actually Google something. I'm probably gonna regret this. Brain surgery scars. Okay, no, never mind. Those are more along the top of the head. I don't really see any along the side of the head. Very back of the head. Yeah. Depending on what part of the brain they were working on, though, it's possible that it's a scar along the side of his head, and they're, like, doing consistent brain surgery on him. Hell, it's possible that... it's possible, then, that they're, like, just popping off the top part of his skull, and, like, maybe it's a zipper, or, like, reusable stitches, like, they're stitching up his head, unstitching it to do more surgery, or stuff like that. Or maybe he's even a fucking test subject. Who frickin' knows? He could just be a human test subject for them seeing, like, how does Hinamizawa syndrome actually work? So he's not really a test subject, but more a research subject, I guess. Coffee. So, if he's being treated for Hinamizawa syndrome and they're working on his brain, then that could explain the bandage. Whereas in Oniidamashi and Watadamashi, I think that's probably... It could be a clever parallel, but it could also be just a coincidence. Because it's like, assuming that we're right about exactly what happened in Oniidamashi and Watadamashi, he was hit in the side of the head constantly by Rena with that clock. So, he has some head trauma, and it hasn't been that long since then. Didn't they say he was out for about a week or something in that arc? Whereas in Watadamashi, he's already out of the hospital, and he probably also suffered some cranial damage from bashing into that door constantly, so, yeah, doesn't really explain, like, his shoulder, I guess. You'd think his shoulder would be in worse shape than his head, but he did, like, get knocked out, and it's possible, like, that maybe, well, actually, that door in Watadamashi, I'm actually gonna try and find the clip of Mion leaving that room. Okay, come on, search bar. Higurashi 2020. Come on. I wish it would load a bit faster. So that was episode 8, if I remember correctly. So if I could just find that, then that would be great. It might take a minute to load because illegal websites and crap. Let's skip around the episode. That's before he's in there. That's when they're on their way there. I'm gonna mute the tab just in case. So, I'm just gonna skip 5 seconds at a time. Torture chamber. I just need to see one thing about that door. Because depending on which way the door opens, could explain a number of things. That's the particular door. It could open both ways, but, yeah, there's Mion opening it inward as they go in. Then Mion's gonna kick him into the fucking cell. Yeah. Trying to find her leaving. She's about to leave. How long was this scene again? They're talking about stuff. It's 1983. She's the head of the family. Come on, show her leaving. God, they talked for a long time. Okay, she's looking at the cameras. She's about to leave. Okay, come on. They actually don't show her walking out, do they? Like, they show a frame of her, Keiichi screaming, and then just the door already shut. So, I think maybe, then, what happened is Keiichi was trying to slam open a door that opens the other way, which, of course, how else are you supposed to open it with force, like try and pull it open? So it's possible that when he got knocked out, maybe they used the battering ram to try and get through that door, and it ended up moving Keiichi's unconscious body against the wall and he hurt his head more. Granted, I don't think it would be anything that major because he was already out of the hospital, but that could explain him having more damage to his head than his shoulder or something like that. But, yeah. Unless did he have his arm in a sling? I'm not gonna check again, but if he did have his arm in a sling, then disregard that, but yeah, for some reason I remember him having a cast on his arm. So, yeah. This has been a very long discussion, but we still got some more to go. So here's my deduction. Cue Dreaded the Grave from Umineko. I would do that, but I don't edit, so sorry about that. Satsuko killed Teppei. Something went down when Ooishi and Harayama visited. Not sure what, but it somehow led to the final nail in the coffin for Ooishi's suspicion. Satsuko lured Keiichi in, attempting to knock him out. This fails, and he ends up murdering Chie, which was never intended to happen. Satsuko hallucinates Teppei over Keiichi in her own fit of Hinamizawa syndrome, confused to shit. Ooishi tracks down the culprit at the festival, and things take a turn for the worse, making it seem like he was committing a shooting. The club members, as well as Ooishi himself, die. As for Satsuko, I'm not sure, but I don't think the answer is particularly relevant. Could be very wrong. She either killed herself or ran to the conflict and died there. I don't know. Hell, it's even possible that Satsuko herself was Ooishi's suspect. I don't think there's enough info to really place what went down there. Keiichi was discovered and taken to the hospital, getting treated first for the injury and then for Hinamizawa syndrome, which spanned months. So, I think a lot of this theory is probably right. I think Satsuko definitely killed Teppei, and Keiichi's definitely getting treated for Hinamizawa syndrome at the hospital because of the trap that Satsuko unleashed on him. I don't think Keiichi killed Chie, necessarily. It's possible, but I'm not sure how relevant it is to what happened at the festival, you know? So either he did kill Chie, or he just slammed around Teppei's corpse, or he killed Rika, or he killed Mion, or he killed Shion. I don't think it's terribly relevant. Either way, I think what matters more is at the festival, I'm pretty sure Ooishi was trying to confront one or the other of the Sonozaki sisters. Things took a turn for the worse, and Ooishi ended up killing whichever sister it was, more than likely Mion, and then maybe Rika died in the crossfire. That's possible. And Ooishi either died or got arrested for murder. I'm not sure that's particularly relevant either, but under the guise of there being more gunfire there, Satsuko did a murder-suicide on Shion, and that's how everything happened there. So, as for why Satsuko's doing murder-suicides, I think it would definitely have to have something to do with Featherin's influence and shit, but we don't know what that influence is, we don't know if it means anything, or if it doesn't mean anything. I personally think that, I've said this before, Featherin is feeding false information to Rika and Satsuko, somehow turning them into Burn Castle and Lambda Delta. Maybe it's some sort of witch initiation trial or something like that. Like, they have to face worse versions of their past with worse circumstances in order to become witches. That's possible. As for why Satsuko's involved, don't know. Not sure at all. But either way, I think that's what's going on there. So she's feeding them false information, telling them, there's a mystery, solve it. But there's no mystery, and it's just bullshit. And it's just inescapable bad fates. Like, maybe Featherin's just like, ah, shit, this arc's going way too well. But she already knows Satsuko's gonna do some shit because of the false information she fed her. And Ooishi's circumstances, she's just like, yeah, well, he can just go and try and kill somebody, maybe. And then that will incite shit. But either way, yeah, I think that's more or less what happened. But I could be incredibly wrong. Last thing, there's a second comment with more information from the same user that says, we were not shown corpses like in the previous two arcs. To me, this makes it unlikely they were even killed with a gun, let alone by Ooishi. I think Satsuko, at least, did kill somebody and then herself. Whether it's Mion, whether it's Shion, whether it's Rika, whether it's Ooishi. It could be anybody. Other than Keiichi or Rena. obviously, but yeah, hell, it could be Tomatake or Takano or Chie, even. Like, either way, I think somehow the same thing also that happened to Tomatake and Takano in the previous 2 arcs had to have happened again, because Rika's dead, but the gas incident didn't happen. And I'm pretty sure that implies, yeah, she's kind of gotta be dead. So, that's it for the comments. But there's one last thing that I want to bring up. And that's, what was Irie's purpose in even being in this arc? Like, in Tatari Garoshi it makes sense, with all the medical stuff in there, the scene at the hospital. He's more or less a character that Keiichi grows to trust, and then at the very last second distrust and wish for his death. Whereas in Tatari Damashi, there's still the scene, like, with Ooishi and Keiichi at the school, and then Irie comes in and helps him. But then beyond that, what else does he really particularly do that couldn't have happened otherwise if not for Irie? I'm more or less bringing this up because it's like, I don't think there's anything in particular that Irie does that moves the plot forward, yet he still gets introduced in this arc. Is it because he gets introduced in Tatari Garoshi anyway, so they shoehorned in it? So he's shoehorned in for Tatari Damashi, just kind of unfortunately? Or is there something more to him being there? I don't know. It's more or less just something I was thinking of. I could be very stupid in just thinking this anyways, but either way, that's about all I have to say for spoilers. So that was 36 and a half minutes. Let's just continue reading. Welcome back, guys. Let's read. Let me minimize that first. Shishibone City was, as far as provincial cities went, rather behind the times. Okinomiya, recessed in the mountains, was even more remote. With little change between the seasons, all that was left was the tepid passage of time, made for a rather drab town. There were no tourist attractions or local delicacies. Without even a strong regional industry, it was simply dull. Just looking at the monotonous and peaceful townscape, it was hard to catch a glimpse of the radical resistance of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. The atmosphere of boredom didn't hint at the Okinomiya police station being on the front lines of the dam conflict, nor of the numerous incidents that I heard about at the prefectural headquarters. Good morning. Are you here to pay a fine? No, I have an appointment with Hondaya-san from the Public Safety Division. Please tell him it's Akasaka. Ah, my apologies. Please wait a minute. The clerk, who thought that I was here for a parking violation at first glance, after fumbling with the unfamiliar extension number, told the person on the line they had a visitor. Just random dude, I guess. Welcome, welcome. Akasaka-san, was it? It must have been tiring traveling out all this way. Sorry we have to do this here. I tried to reserve a reception room, you see. But the counselor suddenly woke up and chased me out. I would hesitate to call where we were a conference room, as it was very small and cluttered. The cramped space was packed with lockers. I had the impression that it was more of a change room that doubled as one for smoking. Listening to his crude chortles, I didn't get much of a feeling that Hondaya, who was head of the local public safety division, was much of an intellectual. But I knew that, in exchange, he had both experience and absolute confidence in his instincts. I apologize for interrupting you during such a busy time. I'm Akasaka from the Metropolitan Police Department. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Hondaya from the Public Safety Division. Nice to meet ya. I was threatened by Sonkai from the prefectural gangbusters to be generous with my cooperation. Gangbusters? You mean the prefectural crime prevention division? You see, we're treating the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance as an extension of the local Yakuza. You'd have to be a newbie if you think they're just a residential protest group. They said at the prefectural office, too, that the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was linked to the local mob. If I recall correctly, the adopted son of somebody influential was a lieutenant in that gang. It's the other way around. The complete opposite. The Yakuza put up the protest group as a front to justify their actions. Just think of it like that. Completely the other way around. Hondaya was just about rolling with laughter. This was slightly different than the info given to me at the prefectural office, but somebody embedded locally would be more knowledgeable. While we were talking, occasionally some people who seemed to be detectives would come in and change. One of those individuals, noticing Hondaya's guffaws, came up to us. Oh, hello there. I was wondering what you guys were talking about. Oh, Kura-chan! Perfect timing, why don't you join us? This here is Inspector Akasaka, who came all the way from the Tokyo Police Department. An inspector? I'm still a rookie. My name is Akasaka. Pleased to meet you. It must be nice to be so fresh-faced. Did they hire you this year? I couldn't help but think I was being ridiculed, so I only responded with a forced smile. This is a new song, I just realized. Probably the best new song since the first chapter. That I can remember, at least. I could tell that this new person was like Hondaya, the type who had confidence in their instincts and experience. I really didn't like those types of people. Let me introduce you, Akasaka-san. This is Ooishi-kun from our investigative department. Regarding the S-file you were asking about, he's familiar with it. S-file? No, and then we go creepy. An S for Sonozaki. If something is an S-file, it means it has something to do with the Sonozaki family. It's something of a code name. Sonozaki? Come to think of it, I remembered when I was poring over the documents at headquarters, there were quite a few people with the last name Sonozaki popping up. If I remember right, there's a Sonozaki who is one of the executives of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. I'm pretty sure they're the treasurer. The two of them were surprised when I rattled off what posts that Sonozaki held. After a moment, both of them erupted into laughter. Akasaka-san, was it? You're quite the studious one. Could it be you've memorized all of the central figures in the Alliance? I wouldn't say memorized exactly, but I've at least read the list of Onigafuchi Defense Alliance executives. Then who are the president and vice president? The president is the mayor of Hinamizawa, Kiichiro Kimiyoshi. The vice president is the priest of the local shrine, Furude. They don't have a real name. The treasurer, yeah. The treasurer is Oryo Sonozaki. The auditor is Makino. The liaison is Yoshiroshi Kimiyoshi. What a cool name, dude. The PR head is Sadao Sonozaki. Akasaka-san, you're pretty good. The pay sucks, but you want to work here? You're just the type we're looking for. By the way, Sadao Sonozaki is head of the youth department. So close. The head of public relations is actually Tadataka Sonozaki. Feeling like I wasn't being complimented at all, I started settling into an uncomfortable mood. However, I was becoming more and more aware that I was the weakest link in this investigation, so I just had to bear with it. I didn't mean for that feeling to show up on my face, but the crafty detectives didn't let that slip by. I didn't mean to make fun of you. To make up for it, why don't I show you around the village? For somebody with no feel for the area like me, it would be a great help. I couldn't have asked for more. In the end, the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance is nothing more than an alias Hinamizawa is using to deal with the outside world. I think getting to know the village would speed up your work. How about it? The residential movement, in other words, held influence over the whole region. So the leader of the movement was the leader of that influence. Just like that, the thought process in the region would become the overall personality of the movement. Just like Ooishi had said, in order to learn what they were really like, this regional force behind the dam protests, getting to know the village was the quickest way. If you would. Nodding back without skipping a beat, Ooishi laughed in satisfaction and stood up. If I took the information I learned at the prefectural office and from Hondaya to heart, if my position was exposed, my personal safety was at risk. The opponent was an extremist group that had no qualms about using threats or violence against somebody. If my personal info was leaked, it wouldn't be hard to imagine that I'd be in danger, whether on the job or not. Thinking that, I felt a little nervous. These guys are quick to remember faces. If you're seen with me, they'll probably do a lot to hinder your work. This might be a little cliche, but put these on. Ooishi handed me an incredibly suspicious disguise comprised of a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a mask. I didn't want to get all hot and stuffy, but Oishi's warning was probably right on the money. Considering that, I put them on with appreciation. I looked so suspicious that Ooishi had to smile wryly. How much did I tell you again? Let's see. To the part where you were talking about how these 3 ancient families control the village. The Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was the same as the village of Hinamizawa itself. Meaning, there was a direct correlation between being an executive in the alliance and being a leader in the village, as Hondaya had told me a short time ago. If the village was ruled by 3 ancient families, then it would mean the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was ruled by those same 3 families. What did the documents at the prefectural office say? About the leader of the Defense Alliance or whatnot? The documents I was using were classified. If I responded to Oishi's question, it'd be a breach of security. However, most likely, this man, I judged, was more well-versed in the situation than any of the documents at the prefectural police department, so I decided to answer him. That the president of the alliance is the current mayor of the village, Kichiro Kimiyoshi. Ooishi, upon hearing that, let out a small chuckle. For him to ask like that and to laugh at the answer as it was recorded in the documents meant that wasn't the case in reality. So then, that means there's somebody else other than Kimiyoshi behind the scenes, contrary to what the prefectural office thinks, or rather, what is commonly known. Old man Kimiyoshi is nothing more than a figurehead. In the first place, the post of mayor in that village is nothing more than ceremonial. In other words, there's someone else in charge of both the alliance and the village. Would that be the three families we just talked about? Well, I'll explain that part right now. All of a sudden, with a thunk, the car suddenly lurched. The paved road had given way to a gravel one. At the same time, the scenery outside the window changed. No, it didn't. Same motion blur. Coffee sip. Nice. The Hinamizawa Dam project must be withdrawn. Overthrow the shameless puppet of a governor. The dam will submerge the natural beauty of Hinamizawa. Protect the village from the unethical dam. Fear the wrath of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Demolish the dam. Those involved must go away. The construction office must respond. The construction office manager must negotiate with us. Signs and banners crowded the roadside. Even reading the brush-scrawled words was daunting. It was as though where the road just changed was a border with a different country. At that moment, I was startled by the car suddenly braking. Looking ahead, a barricade had been erected. About 5 or 6 protesters, wearing masks and helmets to hide their faces, were blocking the road, yelling at us angrily to stop. What is this? A checkpoint? These guys never learn. Ooishi snorted as he rolled down the window and leaned out. Hey, you guys! You can't be blocking the road like this here! As Ooishi glared at them with a malicious laugh, they visibly faltered. Clear the way! We can't get by like this. Who would have thought it was Ooishi's car? That panicked thought seemed to make them lose their presence of mind. Oh, if we had known it was your car, Detective Ooishi, we wouldn't have been so rude. Detective, what happened to your usual car? Is it in for maintenance? Something like that. I just can't get used to this car they loaned me. Judging from their brief conversation, I could guess that they were familiar with the license plate of the car Ooishi normally used. In other words, if they knew the car belonged to the police, they would have hidden the barricade. What they were doing was obviously obstruction of traffic. A blatant crime. Who's that suspicious guy? You, could you show us your face? The man glared at me menacingly. Wearing a mask and sunglasses made me look particularly dubious. Would not showing my face get me into some unnecessary trouble? I turned to Ooishi to see what I should do. Give him a break. He's still a shy little rookie. We just wanted to make sure he wasn't anyone suspicious. Hinamizawa has been in a bit of a stir as of late. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? That mask you're wearing is way more suspicious. The men in Ooishi continued to talk like that, feigning smiles at one another. However, from the beginning to the end, I couldn't get over the feeling I was sitting on a powder keg. Has the number of trucks illegally dumping still not decreased? It's a real hassle dealing with it all the time. If the police could understand and cooperate, it would really help. During that conversation, the barricade was moved, leaving a gap wide enough for a single car to get through. Ooishi lightly honked the horn once and began to roll the car forward. I could see the men's antagonistic glares at the back of the car in the rear view mirror. What was that just now? Blocking a public road like that? Of course it's a crime. Still, if you get worked up over that, it'll never end. Those guys, see, claim there's an infestation of trucks illegally dumping in the village. The story goes that in order to stop that, they're halting suspicious vehicles for inspection. Illegal dumping, like corrupt contractors just tossing industrial waste away. Their line of argument is that if the police aren't going to do anything about it, they'll take matters into their own hands. Well, the industrial waste is just something they're doing by themselves anyways. By themselves? They have a pretty good strategy. You see, in order to hinder construction, they've spread industrial waste over by the dam site. Then, blaming it on corrupt contractors, they start instituting these inspections. There, they stop every construction vehicle coming through and interfere with them as much as possible. So then, it's one of the methods the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance is using. With that inspection just now, this car's license plate has probably been recorded. It shouldn't get stopped from here on out. Those guys know very well not to get me angry. See, rumor is that if they figure a car is related to the construction in some way, not only would there be checkpoints stopping it at every turn, but they'd be throwing rocks and planting road spikes as well. It's best you be careful so you're not identified. If they find out you're from public safety, who knows what you'll suffer through. I wish he was acting like we were talking about something fun, but for me it was no effing matter. It almost feels like we've wandered into a civil war in the Middle East. That's a good way of putting it. It's pretty much just what you said. Ooishi turned to me with a grin and menacing laugh. You see, this is a war zone. The car slowed down a bit as it went down a narrow road through some farmland. You see that house in the forest over there? That antiquated one. Looking at where Ooishi was pointing, there certainly was an old, traditionally designed house. That belongs to the mayor, Old Man Kimiyoshi. You could say it belongs to the main Kimiyoshi house as well. There's a lot of branches, but they'd be one of the three families. The three families? The ancient families that control Hinamizawa? That's right. And one of the others is the Furude family. Their house doesn't even have a single branch, as all that's left is the head priest's family. Right over there, there's the shrine. He's the priest there. By the way, the Defense Alliance's office is on the grounds of that shrine. The office of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. If these guys were the enemy, that would make the shrine their stronghold. Can we go look over there? The shrine is the Furude family's private property, you see. Being police, we can't set foot there without a warrant. See, they've got a member of the Diet with ties to the village backing them up. Basically, being the police has its strengths and weaknesses. Coffee. Nice. Well, even when we talk about the three families, that's something from a long time ago. Way back when, those three families used to hold councils to decide things about the village. Meaning, it's different now? You've got a pretty good nose. That's what I'd expect from an academic. The car braked to a halt with a squeal. Ahead of where we were stopped were several signs. Private property beyond, no trespassing. Beware of poisonous snakes. Danger, turn back. Intruders will be charged an entry fee of 1 million yen. Signs were erected there with things like that written on them. The road was separated from the forest by a chain-link fence wrapped in barbed wire. Since this is private property, this is as far as we go. There's several surveillance cameras set up further in. Saying that we just got lost... Wait. Oh, saying that we just got lost won't work with these guys. They're beyond here, right? The people currently controlling Hinamizawa and the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance were neither the Kimiyoshi family nor the Furude family, but the last of the three. Yeah, beyond here is one of the three families, the Sonozaki family. They're the ones controlling Hinamizawa from the shadows. Among the list of executives recorded in the documents, the number of people with last names from the three families was quite high. God. Of course, Sonozaki was no exception. However, at the top was the Kimiyoshi family. If the Kimiyoshi family seemed to be in charge, the rulers behind the scenes were the Sonozaki family. This double-layered structure implicitly told me that this village had both a light and a dark side. The current head of the Sonozaki family is an old lady named Oryo. She has enough clout that you could call her Empress Sonozaki. Be careful, she's no small fry. She's enough of a VIP that even the mayor of the city has to bow before her. Well, in Hinamizawa and the surrounding area, their relatives amount to a block of several thousand votes. No politician could show disrespect for that. In other words, that would make her the actual leader of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, right? You've got it! With those words, Ooishi pulled out a well-worn cigarette box. The suspected kidnapping of the minister's grandchild and subsequent threats. Were these part of the hidden plot by the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance in order to have the Hinamizawa Dam project cancelled? You came all the way from Tokyo to investigate this, didn't you? Huh? Yeah. That's right. Something the matter? Then... is it related to that direct appeal incident with Minister Inukai? If that's the case, then public safety has them marked on a watch list. Something like that? Having you guess that so quickly makes this easy. While exhaling out cigarette smoke, Ooishi smiled broadly, like I just pulled a good one on him. Or so I thought. His smile disappeared suddenly. That's a lie, isn't it? Huh? I mean the direct appeal putting them on a watch list. That's a lie, isn't it? Ooishi knew there was no way that Tokyo HQ would dispatch an investigator over something as minor as a direct appeal. If they were to dispatch someone, it had to be for a more dire reason. He had figured out as much. But has he figured out coffee? Very nice. I thought of myself as the type of person who doesn't let things show on their face. In front of his watchful gaze, however, I felt that what I was thinking was completely laid bare. So, cool. You and Keiichi are the same character, more or less. Ooishi silently lit another cigarette, as if waiting for me to interject during this awkward pause. I see. So this was a veteran detective's way of getting someone to spill information. But, as long as I realized this, there would be nothing more. If I didn't open my mouth, I wouldn't have to lose anything. All I had to do was stare out the window and enjoy the scenery until Ooishi gave up. You really are bad at hiding things, you know. Being so young and earnest isn't so bad. Ooishi smirked as he twisted out his third cigarette, while I tried not to let him notice that I had yielded completely. At first I'd thought I had won, but at the very least Ooishi had ascertained that I was hiding something, meaning that I might have ended up marching to his tune. Ooishi started up the engine once again and began to move the car. If you'd just been honest with me, I thought I might have been able to help you. How would you help? If the cat was out of the bag, I might as well use it to catch some mice. Well, this depends on what we're talking about, but I might be able to set you up with someone who's knowledgeable about the goings-on in Hinamizawa. An informant? I see, is that what you call it? Why are you interested in my case, Ooishi-san? Well, I'm the same as you. Isn't it our business to know things? Being able to meet with Ooishi's informant was an extremely compelling opportunity. We were looking to recruit somebody familiar with the area to collaborate with for intelligence. In the end, there was no better method for finding people than asking. We were always taught, however, that the rank-and-file police were no better than monkeys. Unlike us, they were careless with confidential cases. We looked down on them like they'd run their mouth off in a drunken stupor. Ooishi was an outlaw even amongst them. Here I was lost on whether or not I should tell him about the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. This informant. Exactly how knowledgeable are they about the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance? If you're from public safety, you know, wouldn't you? Something like that is something I can't just tell you. Protect your sources. That was the first principle of dealing with confidential information. In that regard, it seemed that Ooishi wasn't one of those monkeys. Should I trust him, ask for his help, or not? It's just that you work for the feds and I work for the prefecture. I don't think that our jobs are that different. I think I can be of help. However, I had trouble believing that this crafty old man would simply help me just like he claimed. Now, how should I go about this? Find it hard to believe that someone of your standing would help me out without strings attached. Well, it's not like I'm completely without an ulterior motive. As I recall, you guys have space in your budget allocated to pay informants, right? Something you don't need to submit a receipt for. Just a little bit of that would be the cost of meeting with the informant. In other words, give the compensation earmarked for the informant to you first. Well, it helps that the details of this deal are so clear-cut. He clearly was something else for being able to brazenly state his ulterior motive like this. Rather than him doing this out of the kindness of his heart, everything was a lot cheaper if he was being compensated for this deal. I felt that he was the type of man who was good at these backroom dealings. Don't misunderstand me, please. It's not me who needs the money, it's the informant, okay? Well, in regards to the payment, I'll be handling the money. Foo-foo. When do you want it? Right now would be good. If you don't have it on you, tomorrow works as well. I pulled out a wallet that was different from my personal one. The price was pretty much fixed depending on what kind of information I was paying for. God. In this case, the payment was up front. Also considering the fact I didn't know what kind of info I would get, I shouldn't pay too much. When I suggested that, Ooishi suddenly stretched out his hand and tightly grasped the contents of the wallet. Times like this, it's best you not be so stingy. It's alright, it won't go to waste. I understand. I won't be stingy. And? What kind of information are you looking for? Depending on what you want, how we approach this will probably change. You swear you won't spread this information to anybody else, Ooishi-san? God, my throat. I can't swear as much. I'm the same as you. I can't withhold information obtained during the course of my duties. I got it, I swear. Nothing here gets said anywhere else. On top of that, thanks to you, I can pay back what I owe from my mahjong debts. In any case, I won't break a promise that involves money. I was still unsure if I should trust him until the very last moment, but in the end, I broke down. Ooishi wasn't the type of guy I could trust 100%, but there was no mistaking he had access to underground information networks. In order to accomplish my mission swiftly, I needed his cooperation. I set my resolve. I'm investigating whether or not the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance is related to a certain incident. Certain incident? There's a possibility that the Minister of Construction, Inukai, is being coerced by someone. Saying there's a possibility is kind of a roundabout way of putting it. It appears there's a mole close to the minister, and due to that mole, the minister had been monitored quite thoroughly, and was seemingly forced to cede to their threats right away. None of this was reported to us or the police. I see. So that's why you're saying there's only a possibility he's being coerced. In that case, isn't it a little strange? If the minister didn't report this to anybody, how did you guys know about this incident? If we didn't spy on the minister's private life, we would have never found out. I don't think we have to provide that explanation to the informant, so I'm omitting it. Ooishi had apparently caught on and quietly chuckled when I refused to explain. I see. There's a spy close to the minister, so public safety made it a highly classified investigation. That certainly isn't a very amicable story, is it? If this matter became public, not only would this affect the minister's political career, but the possibility of there being a shift in the political landscape is extremely high. If the perpetrator's aim is indeed that, then this could develop into a very grave situation. Well, with the government having development projects all over the country, they've butted heads with quite a few people. It wouldn't take much wrongdoing for the left-wing parties to suddenly garner more support. We're currently investigating what demands are being forced on the minister, but at least we have a good idea of how he's being threatened. Oh! The minister's grandson was kidnapped. They're denying it, but judging from when he was last seen, it's believed it's already been over 72 hours since the kidnapping. So 3 days. If they were just after ransom money, this would have been settled by now. Maybe this isn't for monetary gain. The possibility that they're forcing the minister to do something politically is extremely high. That's something we just can't consent to. So then, the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was listed as one of the possible perpetrators. That is correct. Kidnap the minister's grandson and demand the cancellation of the dam project. What do you think, Ooishi-san? From your point of view, do you think that's possible? Ooishi seemed to ponder the idea for a while. The section chief at the regional office had responded immediately with, "It's possible." However, Ooishi, who was this well informed about the matter, was hemming and hawing. Finally, just a little bit. He said something that was really just a little bit strange. This was before the Meiji era, you see. This area wasn't named Hinamizawa Village back then. It was called Onigafuchi. This is just what I heard from my grandmother, which is supposed to be his mother, right? Mistranslation again. This topic was so completely and suddenly unrelated to the subject of the kidnapping of the minister's grandson that I was taken slightly aback. Onigafuchi? Oh, so that's why they're called the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. You see, the village of Onigafuchi was said to be inhabited by demons that devoured humans. Even now it's believed that the blood of these demons partially courses through the veins of the villagers. Demons that devour humans? Ooishi-san, what are you saying? It's information. I got a lot from you just now. A little too much. In exchange, I'm giving you a little freebie. Ooishi finally smiled, but it didn't seem like he was fooling around. Please continue. You see, these human-devouring demons, normally they were revealed as Taoist transcendents and lived tucked away from the rest of the world. But they ate people after all, so apparently they'd go to villages in the foothills regularly and abduct their prey. They used to call that being demoned away, or onikakushi. Demoned away. It was the first time I heard such a peculiar phrase. However, I felt something slightly ominous from this horrifying tale of demons abducting people in order to eat them. Look, you know how there's the common phrase, spirited away? When people suddenly go missing one day, they call it that. When the same thing happens around here, they call it being demoned away. How does that old tale relate to the matter at hand? Oh no, there's no direct relationship. I'm just making some small talk here. It's just... Ka-thump, ka-thump. The car shook. At some point, the gravel road had changed to a paved one. It's just what? That around here, the phrase demoned away is somewhat of a code for disappearances and kidnappings. I just thought I'd mention that. I don't know if this has anything to do with the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. Well, there's no deep meaning behind it. It's just there's that little bit of history. Onikakushi, human-eating demons coming down to the foothills and abducting their prey. Then, in order to cancel the dam project that threatened to submerge the village they lived in, did they demon away the minister's grandson? Then, had they already made an example out of the minister's grandson and eaten him alive? It's a bit of an interesting old tale, isn't it? If you set foot into the demon's village without reason, you'll promptly be captured and eaten alive. So, don't go near Onigafuchi. Kids these days might not believe such superstitions, but amongst the older folk in Okinomiya born in the Meiji era, many would never question these warnings. Hinamizawa village was feared by the people in the area. I recalled that piece of information I heard from the Prefectural Public Safety Division. In any case, we're in the boonies out here. It's kind of expected that there would be some superstitions around. Somebody from Tokyo like you, Akasaka-san, probably couldn't even begin to imagine it, could you? The man-eating demons, as the price for violating the sanctity of their village, kidnapped the minister's grandson and swallowed him whole. That ludicrous idea flew through my head. It was so absurd I was half disgusted with myself. Ooishi was just teasing me. Stupid. It's all really so stupid. Come to think of it, by then, I may have already been seized by the curse of that dubious village. For me to realize that would take a little more time. Ooh. I think this is literally the first time we've seen a transition screen. Coffee. Okay. I was gonna say. Oh, achievement unlocked, Land of the Demons. Okay. I was gonna say, this would be a perfect length episode, or at least probably good enough if it goes on for another 10 minutes. And then it's like, hey, here's another 10 minutes. Phone call with Yukie. Okay, so this is his wife, right? Oh, really? It's tough when it's such a sudden assignment. Please be careful. Where are you headed? You're already there? Whenever I headed out on assignment, she would ask where. Not just Yukie, but anybody would have asked the same question. If it was a cold place, she would urge me to pack a thick jacket. If it was far, she'd warn me to be careful and to drive over. It was this normal, everyday concern that led to asking such an obvious thing. I felt sad that I couldn't answer such a run-of-the-mill question. Sorry. It's something that you can't talk about, isn't it? Please be careful. Sorry, Yukie. At some point, you started apologizing right away. Even though when you first started your job, you were all gung-ho about it. Yukie laughed as though she had realized something. At times like this, Yukie had the magical power to see right through me. It's already been quite a while since I was admitted to the hospital. Are you finally getting lonely? Don't tease me. I'm too old to get lonely. Oh, really? You actually like to be doted on, don't you? Don't you start getting a little faint of heart when I'm not around? Oh, jeez. I can see the little devil horn sprouting from your head right now. You've always been like this. You can't hide it. You can't hide it. If I don't play with you, you get all lonely. I can hear your tail wagging over the phone. This side of Yukie wasn't something you could guess existed from seeing her usual modest behavior, and it was something that she didn't show to anybody else but me. Normally I'd poke her to hide my embarrassment and bring an end to the conversation, but I couldn't do that over the phone. Of course, Yukie was clever. She was teasing me because of that. I wonder when I figured out that giving you grief was this much fun. Give me a break. In any case, it's good to hear you so lively. I know, right? Did I cheer you up? I had called Yukie to keep her from feeling lonely when she was by herself in the hospital room. Oh, that is the song. I was like, wait, that's a weird notification. Of course, that was nothing more than a pretense that I, being shy, had come up with. It seemed that Yukie had long since seen through that act. Yeah. Please phone again. When I'm not feeling up to it, I'll get my father to talk with you. Although, if you're talking with my father, I get the feeling that you'd be standing at attention on the other side of the line. For a while longer, Yukie kept teasing me without letting me end the call. Alright. Tip 2, a record of opening remarks. Blood is the fucking third one, so that's awesome. Chairman XX, members of the XX Party. Congratulations are due, as we are celebrating XX years since our founding, haha. These past XX years have seen much growth in XX Prefecture. The once quiet scenery of XX but XX now has the opening of a new XX for the XX train. I'll stop. And with the development of the highway, we've seen the rebirth of a modern city bursting with youthful energy. We've reaped the benefits of new businesses and industry. And with the special reverence the residents of XX Prefecture have for time-honored traditions, history and culture, business and industry, with these ideals in harmony, they have accomplished in growing their city into one of Japan's foremost metropolises. Of course, the development of XX Prefecture couldn't have happened without the growth of the XX Party. We are resolved to see every one of our campaign promises to fruition, reaching our targets definitively and expediently like arrows fired from a bow. With these arrows as the fundamental basis of the XX Party, our members have sought to pierce the obstructions preventing the happiness of the residents of XX Prefecture. But I do believe that everybody here is unlike an ordinary arrow. While being as unfaltering and straightforward, we have not neglected in seeking solutions that conform to the current day and age, while also keeping an eye on the future. An arrow, once loosed, can only fly to its destination. Everyone here, however, is no simple arrow. Even once loosed from the bow, without neglecting our studies, while employing new methods, and implementing more effective and flexible ideas, thus being able to change trajectories mid-flight, we are magical arrows. The modern age marches ever forward. Sometimes it marches faster than the time taken from planning to execution. The following part was not in the script. It is thought to have been ad-libbed by the minister. For example, there have recently been numerous problems with the Hinamizawa power plant project. I don't remember a power plant project. Rather than forcing through the project solely because it was decided upon by the government, it is necessary to reflect on and adjust to the ever-changing needs of the residents, the region, and the next generation. The protests by the local residents that surround the Hinamizawa Dam, these are also the will of the people of XX Prefecture. If you feel that there is no need to listen because the project has already been finalized, then you do nothing more than shed a poor light on Japan's post-war democracy. The following is as per the script. For the lasting happiness of the citizens of Japan and the residents of XX Prefecture, please consider these policies thoroughly. I believe, however, we have all gained something from the flexibility and foresight of the XX Party. I've taken up much of your time. However, allow me to say the following to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our founding. Chairman XX, members of the XX Party in attendance, thank you very much for today. From the opening remarks of the XX Party Prefectural Forum and 25th Anniversary Celebration. Alright. Gears and fire and the taste of honey. Weird. Weird song, too. The world is filled with people blessed with relationships. Of course, that doesn't mean that everyone is connected to each other. It's obvious that on the other side of the planet, there are people laughing and crying who can't possibly have an effect on you. However, in the extremely limited community of the neighborhood, that sort of connection is just a matter of fact. It's quite possible that a single remarkable event could have massive consequences inside a small community. If you were to increase that in scale, a perfect stranger on the other side of the globe might become enough of a legend to have an effect on our lives. Well, it's not always that way. Like I said at the beginning, the links between people basically aren't that relevant in the grand scheme of things. Whether some household nearby is having steak or croquettes doesn't matter to me. When I put on my shoes, it doesn't matter to anybody whether I put the right one on first or the left. This much the average person can understand. But actually, in reality, this is the truth. The bonds between people are quite well defined. It's not just a matter of distance, of being far or near. For example, let's say that person A's actions have some effect on me. Even then, person B's actions could have absolutely no consequence on my life. The reverse also holds true. Just because my actions affect person A, that doesn't always mean that they affect person B as well. Let's put it bluntly. If the bonds between people are like gears in a machine, the gear that represents me meshes with some people, but is isolated from others. There are some who would try arguing against this. Those people would bring up the example of gears in a clock. Each gear indeed only directly meshes with one or two others. However, if you rotate one gear, the one next to it is moved, which connects to the next one, and the next. In the end, all the gears are moving. There is a logic behind this, more than enough to convince the average person. Why is the argument convincing? The answer is simple. The relationships between people are ambiguous, and can only be described conceptually. How the gears are connected and how their movements are chained together can't be used as a fundamental explanation, so it throws a wet blanket on that argument. So for the people who like that explanation, I'll use the example of a clock again to refute it. First of all, to say that this world is a singular clock would be wrong. That is, there isn't only one clock. There exist many clocks in this world, each counting their own time. If you think about it, the idea that this world is just one big clock is the height of arrogance. Even if you use the analogy of gears to explain human relationships, then you should be able to explain it using an analogy of multiple clocks unrelated to a single gear. Neighbors A and B. A is a gear in the same clock as me, so it's best to remain civil. B is a gear in a different clock, so he doesn't really matter to me at all. That's the kind of clear distinction I'm talking about. You want to say I'm being fallacious? Then let's change the analogy to something more familiar, so you can understand. You've probably heard the phrase, a fire on the opposite shore, sometime in your life. No? Nope. For example, if your neighbor's house was on fire, you'd probably try and help to put it out, wouldn't you? It'd be awful if the fire spread and burned down your own house after all. But what if that fire was in a town on the opposite side of a river? Would you still go out of your way to help? You wouldn't, would you? Even though it would be the wrong thing to do, there's no way the fire could spread to your own house. Even if it turned into a huge conflagration, there's no relation between the houses that will spread fire to yours and those that won't. With this basic example, you should be able to see the difference between gears that are or aren't related to your own. Having said that, there's still a lot to think about, even without a river to divide it. After all, it's not a spatial problem like being on the other side of the river, is it? Where the fuck did honey come into play? What? Alright, the chick in the trunk. Alright. The car had stopped, but he didn't know any more than that. For not only was he blindfolded, but locked in the trunk of the car. How could people become this powerless just by being robbed of their sight? He absolutely wouldn't have known this without experiencing it firsthand. He soon realized it was pointless to try and undo his bonds, with the confines of the trunk quickly making him lightheaded. He had no choice but to let this mild torture dull his senses. That's why when the car stopped and the unpleasant vibrations ceased as the engine was killed, he couldn't help but delude himself that he was being set free, even though nothing had been resolved in reality. Of course, he was soon removed from that delusion. He strained his ears when he heard one of the men who had abducted him and an older man he was hearing for the first time strike up a conversation. Nice to see you. The chick is in the trunk. He struggled so much that he's probably exhausted right now. But there's not a mark on him, just as ordered. No, must have been a handful. The trunk opened, letting in a blast of fresh, cool air. Even though up until now he had been thinking about getting out of that stuffy trunk, when it was actually opened, he suddenly became uneasy. Enough so that he wished that the lid of the trunk would once again close, separating himself from them. Suddenly, somebody stroked his head. Of course, since he was blindfolded, he couldn't tell if the hand was petting him or simply evaluating how easy it would be to remove his scalp. Unable to tell the difference, he could only freeze as he imagined the worst-case scenario. Poor little bugger. He's shaken. Just stay calm for a bit. The older man said that kindly as he gently stroked the boy's head. So, relatively old guy. This must be real tough for ya. But you see, your Gramps is a nice man. He'll help you soon enough. Having heard nothing but nothing. I'm still in that fucking dialect. Having heard nothing but the average standard dialect his whole life, the older man's distinct intonation left a deep impression on the boy. But he had no idea what he was saying. For your Gramps to register as meaning your grandfather took a while to process. Eventually, the hand that was stroking his head loosened the blindfold. Can't keep his eyes covered. If he splits his face open, it'd be bad. And with that, we might as well take out the gag. You can't breathe like that. It'll be trouble if he yells. Leave him to us. Jeez, you guys don't know how to treat somebody. The main family said no rough stuff. You better remember that well. Wait, these are two different men, right? Yeah, we won't do anything stupid. As long as the kid cooperates, that is. The man's hand prodded roughly and repeatedly at the boy's head. A rugged hand, unlike the affectionate one that had been stroking his head before. Stay cooperative. If you struggle, there's no guarantee what will happen. That cliched threat was literally beaten into his head. Okay. Didn't expect 4 tips at once, but that happens sometimes. Hotel, alright. Well, I think I'm gonna end things here for now. We're not really quite at an hour worth of content, but we're pretty close. Plus, we had a really long conversation at the beginning, and I'm tired, still. I still have some coffee left, so I'm gonna probably chug it as soon as this video's over, so yeah. That's gonna be it for this episode, guys. If you liked it, then be sure to press the like button, and if you didn't like it, then fuck you too. Remember to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all my videos and stuff. And as always, my name is Godzi, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye!